Okay, Adam Schaffer in here with Flying Fox Fruits. That's my nursery's name. I picked that name out because I figured it was like a fruit bat. You know, a flying fox is a bat, a mega bat that eats fruit. It lives in the tropics too. You don't see them over in the tundra or like the Arctic. It's a tropical type of deal. So think of it as a creature that really relies on tropics and fruit. It's a seed disperser, like airmail. I like that for Flying Fox Fruits. That's why I picked the name. And the what's that called? An alliteration? When you keep hitting them with the same, Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Anyway, the purpose of this video really is, you know, like what got me into growing rare fruit in the first place, I think was, I guess, picking up on what was neglected and forgotten, or things that may have been overlooked. But I'm trying to go through in my mind, this is me. This is not the same for you and your situation, but me as a farmer, and one that was trying to make a difference or make a name for myself or stand out from the rest. How did I rationalize what to grow? Like, why grow this or why not grow that? Why don't you just start a tomatillo farm, Adam? Or why not passion fruit? Why don't you grow passion fruit? Like substantially, passion fruit, you know, just straight up grow passion fruits or papayas or pineapples. Why don't I grow those plants? Well, there's several reasons for that. But I'm gonna just go through my mind, how I think, which doesn't have to be the way you think, and it's not right or wrong, but it's my rational, my logic for why I grow what I grow. First off, take for instance this tree behind me. It's called a Canistel. This one is a variety of the Fairchild number 2, Fairchild 2 Canistel. Here's why I grow Canistel. If you go into a bar and you ask 10 people in America, have you ever heard of a Canistel? 10 out of 10 are gonna say no, just about. You might, depends on what, okay, in my town, all right? Maybe not in South Florida, near Fruit and Spice Park, but typically a lot of people aren't gonna know what it is. In my hood, that's the same for you. So I liked it for that reason. I felt like there was a lot of room to expand and to educate and to push on people, and it tastes good. It's different. It's got a different flavor. I never tasted anything quite like it. It tastes almost like a pumpkin pie, or like, you know, something very rich. I like it blended with cream and sugar and like a milkshake. I don't like it by itself. I'm a real picky eater. It's just too much sweet with no acid. It's almost like a cookie dough type of deal. I like them a lot though, but it's got to have some cream and sugar for me to get down with it. But okay, you can keep them in a pot for a long time. It's not gonna wanna stay in a pot forever. But this thing can fruit in a pot for many years. This one has already probably been fruiting in a pot for 2 or 3 years. It's probably 4 or 5 years old since it's been grafted. They'll stay root bound in fruit. Think of it like a mango with just a little more cold tolerance. So the tree eventually, if you're growing it in a pot, is going to get root bound and stop fruiting like you want it to. But another reason why I choose trees in particular was how many people can grow it without excuse. Like if I try to sell you a mangosteen, the queen of fruits or whatever, wonderful fruit, hard to grow, big tree, cold sensitive, you know, hard to grow if you're in some other state where the conditions aren't right, or if you get a temporary freeze. So I stayed away from fruits that people, maybe they all love them, but maybe the tree is just a little too hard for someone to keep alive in a container. I really saw what I was doing, like selling rare fruit, as something that wasn't just exclusive to people in Florida. All right, I'm gonna give a shout out to a guy named Ohio Jay Cotterman. That was his little username, tropicalfruithunter.com. He was pulling off some stuff in Ohio in a greenhouse that blew my mind. And I was like, if this guy in Ohio set an example like that, people need to be taking out their little pool or whatever and putting in, like, you know, you got to have that little greenhouse, that attachment to your house. That is awesome. He's a trendsetter. More people are going to be ditching the tennis court, the basketball court. All right, it keeps you healthy. That's true. You get your exercise and you keep your game on. But how can you not justify having a little greenhouse where it's feeding you? It definitely keeps you healthy, working, active, all the different fruits and things you can never maybe taste It's something you could show off, be the only guy in town with a fruiting jabuticaba. You'd be surprised what you could pull off in a greenhouse. I know people in Russia doing it. China. Israel, where the temperature is okay there. But you know, all these places in the world, the Czech Republic, all over Europe, Germany. Trying to think of England, London, whatever, all over Europe. Where else are these people that growing them where you'd never think they could do it? Tennessee, Texas. Now some parts of Texas is bad news, hostile. Arizona. So if people, New York City, I got friends in New York growing these things on their balcony, pulling them in for the winter. Pennsylvania, I remember a guy named, I think, Lychee Lover or something. He was one of these guys on the forum, fruiting these things in his basement. I think he was in like Pennsylvania or New Jersey, New York. It looked like a spaceship, you know, like all the foil everywhere and freaking red lights. People were calling the cops because they thought he's growing something else. All right, so this is, show them the fruit on this thing. I didn't get a good fruit set this year, but there's one there. I think there's a couple that set. There's one there. This is the Fairchild number 2. This is something that if you have a decent amount of light, you can fruit it in a pot. There's 3 fruit on this thing. I see 3. It's related to the miracle fruit in Mame Sapote and Abiu. It's all in the same family. Here's another one called Bilimbi. This one you could actually grow in a pot, but it's not one that I get really excited about because it's really cold sensitive. So the more cold sensitive, the less excited I get. And those take about 3 years, maybe 2-3 years if you're lucky to fruit, which is kind of cool. So I do recommend that to some people that are adventurous. But this one over here, Chris, look at me. This is your Montangia Calibura. And I want people to think about this tree more like planting out corn or something. Like something you gotta just plant every year. Or like papayas. They don't like the cold at all, and they might die on you, but look how fast they fruit from cutting. If you get a rooted cutting, you can get a rooted cutting to put on 6 feet in a year, maybe. Grow them in a pot for the first couple years. They die, replace them. They're cheap. That's a yellow one, a little overripe there. I'm not gonna eat that one. But these are ones I'm growing in pot. This is Montangia Calibura, the Jamaica cherry or capulin. These are rooted cuttings. And some are seedlings. Some in the back are seedlings. And this is one that I recommend for people. It'll fruit with a little bit low, you know, it'll fruit under lower light settings, but it likes full sunlight. Really cold sensitive, but it fruits so fast that I see it as having a lot of potential. And they're easy to propagate. So there are some trees that grow, this will grow to 50 feet tall if you let, you know, where it's from. It's got really soft wood too, and it puts out root runners. So in a pot is really nice, like if you're growing it upstate. So what if you killed it? Okay, you paid 40, 50 bucks for it. If you can keep it alive for 2 years and you're the only guy in town fruiting it, maybe you sell it when it gets too big to some other guy that's crazier than you that has a bigger greenhouse. Who knows? This one over here. This one's called KoiMuk. Now, I like the KoiMuk because it's an interesting fruit tree related to the jackfruit. Makes a delicious fruit. If you pick them too early, they're sour, but if you get them just right, they're delicious. It tastes like strawberry, citrus. It almost looks like a custard apple, the way it looks, like a little custard apple, but the seeds are round. They're like yellow on the outside, light pink on the inside. Cold tolerant, down into the low 20s. The issue with it is, if you don't have enough sunlight, it ain't never gonna fruit for you. This one is like, got too much shade, it's just gonna reach up forever like a beanstalk, and it won't. You got to have it in full sunlight. And it takes a while to fruit, man. So I would recommend this to people maybe that are pushing the limits, but you need a grafted tree or an air layered or a rooted cutting. Because if you try to go from seedling, who knows? But from an air layer or a grafted tree, now you're talking, you might have a chance of getting this thing to fruit if you have enough sunlight. If you don't have enough sunlight, forget it. I'm talking full sunlight. Without it, good luck. And who's to say in the wintertime you don't take it inside and have artificial lights on it part of the year? That's what the guys in New York or Pennsylvania, you know, upstate, I've seen them do that. So that's just one there. I like it for me though, for putting in the ground. Like a lot of these I'm thinking for Florida, for Texas, for these states that just get a mild freeze. And I'm trying to give them a lot of alternative crops for citrus. With the citrus greening coming through and all the regulation, I was like, how do I stay away from citrus? So I was going through all these plants that I could plant here in another state, where it doesn't freeze so bad. Louisiana, you'd be surprised. But then for the real mass marketability, something that can fruit in a pot is so important. Something that can, slow growing, doesn't get huge. Something that's not dioecious, male, female, separate plants. Let's do a quick walkthrough and I'll show you a couple more plants. I could sit here and talk forever and I can't do that for the upload time. But let's come over here. Okay, I've talked about this plant before. This is Eugenia Stipitata. I think this is a great one. It can fruit in part sun, full sun. Fruits in a pot. Grows relatively slow. This is one that I think people could be growing all over, just like you could a citrus tree. Maybe a little harder to care for than citrus, maybe. But this is one with potential, wide potential to be grown mass all over. Greenhouses all over. Wherever you got a greenhouse, you could probably grow this. Same thing with the sugar apple, Annona squamosa. But this needs more sunlight than your typical tree. The Annonas, and the Atsamoya, this is the Petpakchong Atsamoya. You can grow these almost anywhere. Sugar apple, which I like better because it fruits smaller from seed. But you need ample sunlight. Without ample sunlight, you ain't gonna get no fruit. Or maybe the fruit you get ain't gonna taste that good. So I really like sugar apple and Atsamoya. But remember, need a lot of sunlight. Doesn't like a hard freeze, but can take a freeze. They just die back, lose the leaves, and come back.
Is that full Florida sun?
Full Florida sun, dude. Beat them up. They're from the Caribbean, and people don't know their true origins. People say from Africa, from the Caribbean, from South America. I've heard all over. It takes brutal heat. Brutal heat. 100 degrees is like, okay, jabuticabas. There's really not a better tree, in my opinion. Think of it as a grapevine that doesn't grow like a vine. It is a tree. Slow growing, can keep it in a pot, versatile, fruits in the sun, fruits in the shade. Well, depending on the variety, some probably don't like as much shade. Like Cambuca and deep shade, I think you're gonna get poor fruit production. But there's just so much variation. The grafting compatibilities, it's just like collect the whole set. It doesn't stop. But Plinia as a genus and the jabuticabas and the close relatives, hard to beat, man. The Eugenias, so much diversity. And you never know, you go and plant all these seeds, you might come up, start something new on your own. Curtis Mosey, the Moseys, this one I named after Mosey. And I'm telling you, it's something different. And it's decent, and it makes a big fruit, beautiful tree. It's all about something a little different. And I wouldn't have this if it wasn't for John Kimber giving me Grimmel. And then I got this to fruit next to the red, and so they crossed it. This is theoretical, I'm pretty sure I'm right, but I'm not gonna sit here and say for sure. But based on my experience, we're getting hybrids here that are just casually occurring. And I've talked to the professionals in Brazil. They happen, they occur between Eugenias, Plinias, Garcinias, Annonas for sure. You never know. You get a mutant, you get a hybrid, plant a bunch of seeds. Each one's like a scratch-off ticket. Longan, lychee, I recommend these. These are just highly marketable, but air layered or grafted. Seedling is forget about it. And just like I said, you got to plant seeds for the scratch-off. The people who still plant seeds of longans are important. We got to keep planting seeds. Don't make fun of that guy who plants that seed. You never know. All right. This Garcinia is called Luke's Garcinia. Wonderful fruit tree, but I think it presents a problem to people who are pushing the zone limits. In states where it gets really cold, I think it's gonna be hard to contain this tree over the long term, almost like it would be for a mango. This is similar to trying to fruit a mango tree over the long term, but I feel like a mango as a grafted tree is gonna be easier to fruit quicker. These things are just big trees, but don't let me tell you can't do it. They take a freeze, no problem. And they fruit in part shade. They like full sun, but they fruit in part. They can take almost any kind of soil you throw at them, but they like acid and they like it wet. Don't let me tell you can't do it. If you could fruit the lemon drop, I think you could fruit this, but the lemon drop is so much more well behaved for fruiting, pushing the zone limits when you're out of your state, out of the growing region where it should be. Garcinia brasiliensis, which is the lemon drop mangosteen, is one of the best Garcinias and highly marketable for people that are pushing the limits and trying to fruit a mangosteen relative outside of the tropics. I'll show you one over here. Look at these in the water. Some reds, no, Sabras in the water. Sitting in that water. This tree right here, that's your lemon drop mangosteen. This thing's already been fruiting for a couple years. It's probably 6 years old. If you get lucky, you get them to fruit in about 3 years, but typically it's gonna take about 5 years. I haven't seen any Garcinias really that fruit as fast and as much. That's why I like it. It'll fruit in the shade, deep shade, or full sun. They are strong. They take just about whatever you throw at them. They just don't like a freeze. If you can keep them above 29 to 30, 30 degrees is okay. It's gonna defoliate and not die. I think the kill temp for this mature tree is gonna be about 29 degrees, 28 degrees in Florida. That's not the same as California because we have a shorter duration, more humidity of, when the freeze comes. But these are excellent. You can fruit them in a pot, especially if they're grafted and they grow really slow. So you're not gonna be able to keep it in that pot forever though. That taproot will coil up, but they fruit when they're root bound. I've had them root bound, they still fruit. The fruit gets a little smaller. This one, I don't know if it has fruit on it now. It did. There's usually one hanging out. There's one right here. There's one over here. Kind of hard to see, but there's a little runt fruit over here hanging out. And this one just got into fruiting a couple years ago, and production hasn't been intense yet, but it'll get there. It takes time. It really does. Carambola. I think that's a great one, man. They fruit quick, they fruit a lot, they fruit in the shade. If you kill it, oh well, get a new one. But they're taking a wet here. They take the wet conditions. They love being in the shade, but they can take full sunlight. You can prune them back like crazy. Carambola is a wonderful tree for people pushing the limits. I think it's highly marketable. But let's get outside of these varieties that we're already growing. Arkin is one that is just, everyone has an Arkin. I'm nothing against it, but there's some great varieties out there that are being underutilized. Let's show them the Fuang Tongue again. I know I'm showing them some repeats, but Cherry of the Rio Grande, Eugenia Involucrata. This one looks like trash, but that's a great tree. You can fruit in a pot for many years. It takes a freeze. Fruits in part shade. Sapodilla needs good amount of sunlight, but that's a great one. I think if you can fruit a mango, you can fruit a sapodilla, and you can keep them in a pot, cut them back. There's certain varieties that stay smaller than others. Sapodilla, that's one I see it has value in it. Now, Plania edulis is one that is gonna be hard for people that are pushing the limits because the tree, in my experience, has to get big. And it needs more sunlight to really flower. You can do it if it's grafted or air layered, let's say. I think you could pull it off. But this is something for someone that is willing to dedicate a little more space and time and energy. But this isn't something you're just gonna pull off like a pitanga. Think about it. Eugenia uniflora in a pot is excellent. Everyone should be trying to grow that in every state. A pitanga, just a regular Suriname cherry in a pot, grafted would be great. Seedling, whatever. Pitanga tuba, wonderful. All that vitamin C and that nutrition. Acerola, Barbados cherries, those are wonderful. Everyone should be trying to grow it. It'll fruit with minimum sunlight, but it really needs full sunlight. And you can replace those real quick. They sell them from rooted cuttings, so they're easy to replace. Cattleya guava is a wonderful fruit tree that will fruit in part shade, and you can fruit it in a pot. There's no excuse not to be growing it. This tree, Achacharu, forget about it. If it's a seedling, forget about it, because this one's old and it should have flowered by now, but it's hard to keep a lot, it's hard to get this thing to fruit outside of its zone if it's a seedling. But if it was grafted, or maybe a rooted cutting or air layered, then you might have a chance. But some of these trees as seedlings, too big, too much, forget it, man. It's starting to frustrate me. Eugenia Calicina, great one to try. Just like the Cherry of the Rio, but more tolerant of horrible conditions. Loquat, grafted loquats, man. That they'll fruit in the shade, dude. These handle all sorts of abuse. You could be growing these all over in pots and cut them back and they fruit on the new growth. These are Loquats, I really recommend them, but good varieties, man. All right, let's show them. This is the carambola, the flying tongue. But see, you just don't see these as much because of the wings. They're hard to ship. Those deep wings make it really fragile, but it has a unique flavor in a whitish color, not that deep orange. I like them a lot. These, you could be growing these all over, man. They get good flavor even in the shade. Let's show them one last tree, a couple more, and we'll quit. The Eugenia's highly marketable. Garcinias are good, but be careful. Some just get too big, take too long to fruit. Okay, this is a lemon drop mangosteen right here. Look, this one's a small one. Look, it's been fruiting for a minute. See the fruit down there? Full sunlight. This thing gets beat up in the full sunlight, baby. Yeah, this one's been out here. This is a seedling. It's probably like, by now, it's probably 6 years old by now. But it's been fruiting for a couple years. This is actually the fastest one I've seen fruit from seed.
Not as protected either.
I protected it. I
Okay.
put a 100-gallon pot over it when we got it freezing. You just cover it up, but it's gone through like 25 degrees, bro. This one too. This is the normal. That one's a special variety of lemon drop. This is the regular one. Dude, there's not many fruit trees that fruit as much as this. Like, we're always pulling fruit. There's fruits on it now and flowers. They're kind of hard to see. Is there one to eat now? Not yet. I've been pulling them off. Yeah, take a look around. This is what we're gonna leave it at over here though when you're done over that. No rush. I want a chicken hose. This is my chicken. Her name's Pretty Eyes. Her name is Pretty Eyes. Come look at her eyes. She got the prettiest darn eyes you ever did see. There's something about her that's not right. She was, incubator temps got a little messed up when she was going in, but she lays consistently. She's a wonderful chicken. Partially retarded, I guess we'll say. Visual acuity issues. What a wonderful bird. She stays a homebody. She likes to stay at home. Okay, now this is where we're gonna leave it at. Let me tell you why I like this tree and why I don't like it. It's called Garcinia livingstonii. It comes from Africa. It is also known as the Imbe or African mangosteen. And the tree itself is what is known as dioecious, coming usually with a plant that makes androgynous flowers and male flowers. Whoa, she just blasted the hugest. Show them that. Look at that's all one blast. She just blasted. All right, now come back up. Now, the tree makes either, it's dioecious with certain plants making only androgynous and male flowers and other plants only making male flowers. I have a tree here that makes androgynous and male flowers and it actually makes fruit, but not a lot. I've heard if you really want to get a tree, if you really want to get fruit production, you need 2 trees. And you're going to need male, female. But it's not truly male, female because the males can make androgynous flowers too. It's confusing, okay? All I know is that I have a lone tree right here. And they say in the books that you need 2 to get fruit. I have a tree by itself that fruits. But it's never made a crop that blew my mind. You know, it's always just made a handful of fruit. They're delicious. This takes the cold like a champ. Show them some of these flowers. I'm getting bit by an ant over here, careful. It takes the cold really well. Like, I mean, low 20s. And it'll fruit. It doesn't like to fruit in part shade. You need good sunlight for it to fruit. But show them how it's taking the flooding over here at the bottom. Look how wet it is at the bottom. Standing water, basically. But the problem with the tree is it's a big old tree. It's a big tree. It grows relatively slow. But typically you're gonna need a male, female. And if I was gonna tell someone to try to fruit this, I would tell them to either get a grafted tree or a rooted cutting or air layered. And then maybe you'll get, if you have enough sunlight, maybe you can get it to fruit. But I think it's gonna be a challenge. This one, I mean, it's so beautiful though. And the wind, I mean, these leaves are like cardboard. Like, how are you gonna? Let's take one look at this too, this Luke's Garcinia. Because this one's as small as I've seen them flowering and fruiting. It puts fruit on, but they haven't held. I had one on here someplace. There was one at some time. There was one hanging out. There it is. I think it's gonna fall off. It's got scale on it. I guess that's a good sign. No, the stem looks like it's gonna come off, but there is a fruit right there. Let's see if there's any more. This one doesn't like the high heat. I had to put a shade cloth over it. The leaves were getting burned. Luke's Garcinia, though, is supposed to be one of the premier, best Garcinias. Fruit that big, edible skin, low acid, good flavor. It's supposed to be delicious. I can't wait till mine holds the fruit. There's fruit on it, but they've been dropping. And I only have one tree right here. Like, it's not getting pollinated by anything. I've got some other ones that are flowering but haven't fruited quite yet. Anyway, just wanted to give you some ideas on why I pick out fruit trees and what makes them intriguing or, you know, provocative to me in terms of marketability and mass appeal. Thank you, Chris, for your help. Freedom Fruits is on the camera. Chris Lehman, Freedom Fruits. Adam Schaffer and Flying Fox Fruits. Make sure to get out there and grow something different. It doesn't have, you know, do something different if you can. Make a change. Be that change. Take care, y'all.